It's another battle for the Aggies, and the KSL Sports Zone has it covered. The Aggies head south to Las Vegas for a Saturday afternoon showdown against UNLV. Your home for all the play-by-play coverage of Aggie football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to get the inside info on BYU with Cougar insider Mitch Harper of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
They call him the GOAT of all things BYU. They call him the legend of Cougarville. They call him the king of all Cougars. They call him the court jester of all things Cougar Nation. What other things can I call you, Mitch? I mean, you've got them all. Mitch Harper joining us now. How you doing, Mitch?
That's quite the introduction, Hans. I appreciate that. I'm happy to be on. It was, quite the weekend in Lubbock. The town was not the greatest,
Sucky.
but the stadium was really impressive. I got to say, Texas Tech is invested into their football team, and it's working out quite well for them.
Oh, man, the community is incredible. They support the place, but let's be honest, man, the brown grass. Did you park in that parking structure that's tagged with all the graffiti?
I did, yes.
That's crazy, man.
The Raider garage.
How does anything great and successful actually thrive here? It's kind of impressive. And did you pick up on the manure smell? It was like a mink farm smell pretty much everywhere you went. When
I was leaving the stadium, it stood out, but even in the morning a little bit at college game day, there were just hints of you get a sudden whiff of some manure smell. It's just like, where did that emerge from? Yes, it was often.
It was weird. I checked my upper lip like 5 times. I'm like, is that me? Like, what exactly is that? And then I told Lloyd the story. So, Mitch, that overpass that goes from the parking structure over to the stadium?
Yes.
Somehow I stepped in a big load of dog poo and had dog poo all over my shoe. So I'm sitting in the booth with, Greg and everybody. I'm like, oh, what is that smell? And it was on my shoe. So,
wow.
Really a rough place, but an incredible support system, great fans, a beautiful stadium. Now it's got great history with Patrick Mahomes, who came back and he ignited the place. But overall, Mitch, give me your thoughts on how that game played out.
I thought it showed that there's still a pretty big gap between BYU and top 10 teams. And I think one of the big things that I come away with from that game is the nice thing, whatever happens this year, and obviously BYU's got everything still in front of them with the Big 12 championship game, but they have a program that they have to go chase when it comes to roster construction, because even in revenue sharing era that's going to go forward this upcoming year in 2026, Texas Tech's not slowing down. They are going to pay at a high level for players, and BYU has to, and other programs in the Big 12, but BYU especially, who's been very well resourced and stepping up at a much greater level than they ever have in their past, they still got to go to a higher level to take down a program like Texas Tech, who's getting some of the best athletes in the country in football and really all their sports. You saw it in that game on Saturday when they had a timeout. They highlighted, Chris Anderson, the basketball player, the star softball player. Her name escapes me right now, but, they're paying a premium. And Texas Tech, it was kind of like a showcase moment of what they're doing and how they're operating, with Cody Campbell being the face of it all as far as, rallying the boosters and the donors together. It's working, and it's not slowing down. And, they have a chance to maybe be the top dog in the Big 12. And BYU is going to always be a really good team, but I think there's still that pretty big gap between what BYU is investing into its roster and someone like a Texas Tech. So, but I really would be curious to see if BYU could get that rematch with Texas Tech. But a lot's going to have to change, because I thought offensively BYU was at times felt hesitant and scared at times, and a little bit afraid of Texas Tech's defense, which they were dubbing the best since 2023 when they faced Texas. So disappointing effort, I thought, by BYU. The defense showed up, but I think big picture-wise it shows that they got to continue to invest more than ever before to get a type of roster that Texas Tech assembled.
All right, let's get into some personnel news here, Mitch. Can you shed any light on Justin Kirkland? Because it feels like that's, to this point, it's kind of the letdown of the year because he was expected to be such a big piece of that defensive front. Help BYU fans understand what's going on there.
Yeah, he's been out since the Utah game, and what's interesting with Kirkland is that he's only played in 4 games this year, and there's a blanket waiver with players that they can appear in postseason games and it doesn't count towards their eligibility. And, could there be a situation where he doesn't play the rest of the regular season, and if you get to a Big 12 championship game, a playoff, or a bowl game, then he could play again, and you could still have the chance to come back because he has the opportunity, if he was to redshirt, that he could come back next season because I do believe that this year has been very tough on him. Even when he showed up in the Colorado game, he wasn't full strength, and he's still been dealing with the knee injury that limited him and kept him out of fall camp. And you wonder if that's kind of maybe the thought process there of where things, with 3 games left, it's just tricky because that interior, the defensive line, outside of Keanu Tanavasa and John Talmoy-Peau, it's very light in terms of depth because after those two, and if you don't have Kirkland and you don't have Anisi Purcell, you're going to Kafusi Pafoke from Weber State, a grad transfer, and then a true freshman in Ulavai Fetuli, who showed some good signs in fall camp. But you're chasing a Big 12 championship game. You need to have your key guys that you can trust snap after snap if they get called upon into action. So it's a difficult spot, and that's going to be one with Kirkland to monitor. But him officially getting removed from the depth chart is never a positive sign because trends have shown that when BYU does that going into a week, they're not expecting that player to play. If they think there's maybe a chance a player will go, they'll still leave him on the depth chart. But when they're just removed altogether, kind of gives you a sign that they're not expecting that player to play this week. But it leaves still open the opportunity to play in the postseason if, in fact, that's kind of the path where they're thinking maybe a red shirt for Justin Kirkland.
It's a heartbreaker, man, because I was really anticipating him and Keanu Tanavasa being the patrollers on the interior. And, Keanu's picking up a lot of double teams. There's no question. I mean, there's a lot of focus put on moving Keanu out of there. But whatever he's at, 15 tackles, 16 tackles, and 1 sack, and a couple of TFLs, you would hope that Keanu could really push in through these next 3 games and be a difference maker. I was hoping that we would call his name 3 or 4 times against Texas Tech and that he'd be an interior nightmare because you need him to be an interior nightmare. And you're right, Noah Nisi Purcell. I was calling the true freshman's name on Saturday between Nusi Taumapeo and a couple of other guys that are on the field trying to get some reps, and it's like, geez, man, that could be a problem down the stretch. Even though BYU's defense wasn't the problem, it's something that I'm really paying attention to.
It definitely is, and Purcell is someone that's been very underrated because he played in that Iowa State game, had a sack, and has been a really good performer coming from Southern Utah. You think back to the Arizona game, he was out in that one, and BYU had some struggles, and he was out this past week against Texas Tech and still not listed on the depth chart this week. So that is a banged-up position group heading down the stretch run for BYU. And Talmoy-Peau and Tanavasa are clearly the top 2 guys, but if you want to give them a breather, you don't really have that luxury because there's a pretty big drop-off from those 2 to the guys that would be projected to be the backups behind them going into this week.
Another spot that I worry about that is thin and banged up, L.J. Martin had 16 touches in that game against Texas Tech between the ground and the air, 10 carries and 6 receptions for 30 yards. L.J. Martin is somebody that I need to see 30 touches in order for this team to be as productive as it can be, 30 healthy touches. LJ, when he was in that first quarter, 45 yards rushing in that first quarter, Mitch. Like, I was looking at this thinking, all right, man, this is on pace to be a nice 150, 160. and they can control some pace, and they can keep in this game. 22 yards through the other 3 quarters. So L.J. Martin is critical because I'm not seeing it from Preston Rex. I'm not seeing it from Enoch Nawahine. I'm not seeing it from Javessa Dumuni. And obviously we're not seeing Sione Moa come back anytime soon. So help BYU fans internalize it, understand it. How banged up is L.J. Martin? How much can he really contribute coming up this weekend against TCU? And what do you expect from them?
I thought I thought it was noteworthy too in the opening drive of the third quarter when the 2 touches to a running back to open that quarter after BYU's defense got a 3 and out. The 2 running back touches were to Preston Rex, and you felt like in that moment where maybe there's a little brief window where you feel like you might be able to get some momentum because that was lacking throughout the entire game, and they didn't turn to LJ. And LJ did play on that drive, but I just thought, why are they not going to LJ Martin? And I even asked Kalani on the health of LJ after that game, and Kalani just said, kind of danced around it a little bit in terms of health, but this team goes as far as LJ takes them. And if LJ, and I think you make a great point, that number, 30 healthy touches has got to be the benchmark for this team because Bear looked like a true freshman, and I think that's to be expected. He's going to have those moments. I think he will bounce back, but LJ's that steady force that no matter who he faces, he's going to get his when he's healthy. And when he's not healthy, you have days like Saturday where maybe he has that early on where he feels a little fresh after 2 weeks without getting hit and building up some excitement for that Texas Tech game, and then over the course of the game it wears off and where they can't turn to him, and that's going to be a big area to watch, I think, for this TCU game is the workload for LJ Martin, because it's going to be a cold game, weather conditions. You want to just maybe make this thing as quick as possible and run that football, but you don't have other options besides LJ Martin at running back. You just don't right now. Preston Rex could be a nice pass catcher out of the backfield, and he's shown that in moments this season. But running the football, I don't think you've got another option that can get you 10 carries that you feel confident that player is going to be able to move forward and get positive yardage. And that's concerning. And the Texas Tech's ability to completely erase Baron Bachmeier and his success up the middle was very noteworthy too. I mean, they just took that away completely. Yeah. And so it was a non-starter. And, maybe it's just a case of they played maybe the best defensive front, not only the Big 12, but college football. I think there's an argument to be made there. But this one's going to be critical. Kalani referenced it as circle the wagons game. They got to circle the wagons around L.J. Martin, and because if they want to be the Big 12 champion, he's got to be good, and he's got to be the best running back in the Big 12. And to this point, until that injury against Iowa State, he was, and they need him back as soon as possible to be just. He was back, but they need him to be completely healthy, the guy that he was earlier in the season.
Mitch Harper, our BYU insider, joining us for a few more minutes. Mitch, I don't know what to make of Parker Kingston at times. Going into that game, I said BYU has to be all square, if not +1 in the turnover margin. And as soon as he fumbled that punt after a really nice defensive stop, my heart sank. My guts kind of fell out. I thought, you can't do this. Like, you just can't. Not in this stadium, not against this team. You can't have that mistake there. I think it's his 3rd muff punt on the year, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me on that, Mitch. But your thoughts on Parker Kingston as a punt returner and also as a receiver. It just feels like there's times where I want to just hug and kiss the guy and tell him he's the world to this team. And then there's times it's like, dang it, man. Your thoughts on his kind of inconsistencies, but overall, he is critical to this team, is he not?
He is. He's huge to this team. And, when I think you saw the struggles when you stay at the wide receiver unit, JoJo Phillips, he made his return. It was a lackluster day from JoJo. I mean, some of these receivers did not help Bear Bachmeier. Even the Chase Roberts deep ball, he probably should have caught that. His hands are on it, as he put it. He should have caught that ball. So these receivers didn't help the cause for Bear, but Parker in particular, it's been a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde this season. I think the problem that punt returner for BYU is that the backup option, Tiger Bachmeier, struggled mightily earlier in the year. You think back to that Colorado game. I mean, that was that was kind of a mess where he didn't know where he was on the field. And I don't know if you have another option that you turn to. I think Cannon DeVries, a true freshman, he was good in some punt return action against Portland State. But again, it's you're getting to that point where you're chasing a title. You don't want to turn to true freshmen that haven't done it week after week. So you got to continue to roll with Parker Kingston, because I think we've seen with Kalani in moments like that, and he has referenced that the muff punt and the shank by Sam Vanderhart quite a bit since Saturday.
Many times.
That drives him up the wall, because you've heard it, Hans. I mean, the program is in these guys' hands, and to muff a punt, that was not forgivable. And typically, I think BYU would have said, okay, go to the next guy. But it was not very good when Tiger took over earlier in the year, where it was kind of open competition after that Stanford game, and Parker was having his struggles, and you kind of chalked it up to Parker was banged up in fall camp. He wasn't fully healthy yet to open the season. And then when he gets full strength, as Kalani pointed out with that West Virginia game, he really hit a stride, and it's been pretty consistent up until that muff against Texas Tech. And you wonder too if BYU just felt like it was a little bit of the stage was too big for this team. Because it surprised me that they were not as competitive. I thought that BYU would have been competitive in that game, and even Kalani pointed to there was nothing that Texas Tech threw at them, both defensively and offensively, that caught BYU off guard. It almost just felt like nerves got the best of BYU, which was so surprising, because this team's played and program has played in some really big games the past few years and big opportunities, whereas Tech was the team that was kind of new to the scene and playing in a big game with so much on the line. They hadn't done that in 17 years, so that was disappointing. But I think you got to continue to go with Parker Kingston at punt return and just kind of understand, like, that's part of the deal with him, because he's far and away their best option at punt returner, and he's one of their best receivers as well in that receiver unit.
Mitch, thanks for your time, brother, and we'll see you coming up on Saturday. Again, another night kick against TCU. My anxiety is pretty sky high over all of it. TCU's probably looking at some Texas Tech stuff, but TCU can't do defensively what Texas Tech did, especially across the front. But we'll see you Saturday, buddy.
See you Saturday, Hans. Looking forward to it.
Appreciate it. There you go. Mitch Harper, our Cougar insider, does a fantastic job here with the Sports Zone. Sports Roulette coming up.
And it's time to talk some sports. This is Sports Roulette with Hanson Scotty on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hanson Scotty, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We are live at Sound Sleep, hanging out with Melissa. We appreciate her. We appreciate Sound Sleep. And truly, if you're not getting the sleep you need, this is an amazing offer for you to get that sleep. 801-285-9731. If you haven't heard about the oral appliance, it really is taking over where CPAPs have left off, and CPAPs have just become a burden between the noise, the maintenance, the cost, trying to vacation with them, trying to fly with them. The CPAP just isn't the answer anymore, and these oral appliances are very small, easy to put in a carry-on, easy to take with you on vacation, and still give you that amazing sleep that you need to have good health. 801-285-9731. We love the people here at Sound Sleep. By the way, be thinking about Scotty G, as Scotty G is out there doing a good man's work, making sure that he's healthy for his family and kids. So
send your prayers.
Send your thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers
towards Scotty G as he heads into no man's land. It's just not a fun time. It's just not a fun time as he's going in to get those checks that you need to get when you start to creep up on that age of 50. So good luck to Scotty. Make sure that he's getting the care and love that he deserves. We had Alex Jensen.
Oh, cancer.
We had Alex Jensen on the show earlier today, and in lieu of Sports Roulette, I just wanted to play a little bit of it because Alex is coming into a tough situation, a very tough conference, and having to rebuild after some down years and a lot of expectations heaped on Alex. And I'm excited to see what Alex can do with the running Utes at the University of Utah. And we got to catch up with him a little bit earlier in the show, and we started by talking to him about feeling kind of strange just hearing Coach Alex Jensen back with the University of Utah.
Yeah, no, it does feel weird. There's usually a memory or two that comes back every day I'm up here. Good and bad. I think I'm, diving deep into the, what the things that formed me when I was here. But no, it's great, but it is, it hits me every day.
I have a lot of different acquaintances and friends that were a part of those teams in the Majerus eras, and boy, it's a mixed bag, Alex. It's all over the place with how these guys feel about their time. How do you feel about your overall time at the University of Utah under Coach Majerus?
You know what? I couldn't have asked for anything more, to be honest with you. It was, I don't think anybody would say that it was easy. Coach Majerus, you could obviously argue the delivery of most things, but you knew where you stand, you got the truth. And and I would say this, I think anybody that spent time with him at the end of the day would agree they were better off because of it.
I've heard from people that you were one of Majerus's favorites. Is that true?
You know what? I had my days. Like everybody else, I faced the wrath, and I think it was it was easy for me to do what I was told as hard as I could.
Yeah.
so I guess it was a little bit easier.
We'll just let you know who the little birdie is. Britton says that you were the favorite child.
Well, I wasn't going to say it, Scotty.
That's all right. I had my own timeouts and my own times in practice where I got it too. I mean, I don't think anybody was immune.
Yeah. All right, so big win last night. You knock off Holy Cross, and a big performance from Terrence Brown. It's still so early in the year, and a new team that you're bringing together. How do you feel like the trajectory in terms of chemistry is where is where you want? Is it where you want it to be, or has it still got a long way to go?
You know what? I think it's getting better. I think it has a long way to go, and it's something I expected coming in because, with a whole new staff and mostly a new roster, it's not going to happen in a month or two or even in a year. And I think, the line I use a lot of the time with me and my staff is like, we came here because we wanted to be here. We had good jobs. And so like the decisions we make aren't to win, next week or the next month, but to get better and build it and hopefully get it back to where it has been for decades, where you're good for a long time.
You talk about that, building it and getting it better and getting it to where it was for decades. I looked at the fan attendance last night, and you think about how tough this season's going to be and some of the conference opponents that are going to show up. And, Coach, I keep thinking, what can we do to fill the Huntsman? Because when that place is full, you played in front of it, that place can be very, very daunting. Is it just as simple as getting back to winning, and they will come?
Yeah, winning's the easy answer. I can remember, when I played here, it's still hard for me to be in there and it not be full. And I can remember football, that was always, 30 years ago. And credit to, Kyle, what Kyle and his predecessors and the people he's done with it, what they've built that into. But I remember they said the same thing about football. But you win, that'll fill it. So, yeah, the simple answer is you win. And I think a lot goes into that. I think we had 3 times as many musts in our opener than the year before. And I think a lot of it is, winning, but just bridging, connecting with, students, fans, community, and everything through a lot of things off the court.
You spent some time on Rick Majerus' staff. You coached a little bit in college and then made the jump into the pros and now back into the college ranks. How much has the game changed since you were last coaching in the collegiate ranks?
I think the hardest thing is the game's just so much different. I think it's unique. I think it's the last basketball league that has a 20-minute halves and they don't have quarters. I think it's just a completely different game. And, I think the changing of it is, just that obviously the NIL and the portal, like you just have different teams all the time. And, and I don't think anybody does this, but especially I don't want to have a new roster every year. And the fun part about college, is having a kid and watching them grow and get better, and then you have some continuity on your team. I think I think that's probably the biggest change, like the NIL, and I think it's going to continue to change. There's so many gray areas, but as soon as they get more guardrails in, I think it could be good. Hopefully they come sooner rather than later.
That's been the big conversation, and I was just in Lubbock calling that BYU Texas Tech game, and I was talking with somebody behind the scenes from Texas Tech, and he said that they've got about $7 million in 6 defenders that they brought over in this last transfer portal, and told me the defenders, and I was going through it, shaking my head thinking, my gosh, that's a lot of money. Alex, back in our day, I played for free, you played for free. Like, we couldn't even take a sandwich from our coaches or from the university. And now it's just so different. And Kyle Whittingham is on record saying that he thinks that the top 25 eventually will reflect the top 25 in NIL payouts. Do you feel kind of similar with that in the world of basketball? Because it feels like money would affect basketball more than it would even football, just with the amount of superstar power that you can get in the world of basketball. But do you think that that's an accurate statement? And do you think we're getting closer to evening this thing out with distributions?
I think. I watched. I think he got asked that again right after this last week, because I heard him say the same thing, and I think Kyle's spot on. In the top 25, there'll be some outliers, but yeah, it's going to reflect the top 25 spenders. And going back to it, there should be some evening out. I don't think it's that difficult to do. The NCAA doesn't necessarily move as quick as other organizations, but yeah, I think, like I said, I think that you hear coaches all the time in basketball, football, and other sports. Right now, even after the settlement, there's more questions than answers. But yeah, definitely, Texas Tech is, I think they have a couple big boosters, and BYU, for instance. But yeah, I think definitely the top 25 will reflect the top 25 NIL spenders. But I don't think hopefully, I wish we were closer to more of more guardrails and an even playing field than we are. But I think that it's not a terribly difficult path to get closer to it.
So there's players, and in particular, you look at a guy like VJ Edgecombe, who was a really good college player and then just erupts at the NBA level, and people are always like, well, why didn't we see that in college? And it's such a different game with the lack of spacing and the ability to do things, in the collegiate game that you can do in the NBA game. Going from the NBA to the collegiate level, where that spacing collapses quite a bit, how hard is that to you to adjust your mindset as a coach, knowing the restrictions and the freedom of movement that you just don't have at the NBA level?
Oh, you know what? Great question, because I'm still learning. I say a day doesn't go by because the spacing's so different. We'll watch a European game, and in college, and I kind of like it. They don't call as many touch fouls, especially in the Big 12. It's more physical. The spacing is close to non-existent. And, speaking of Edgecombe, that's something 30 NBA teams try to do. They try to project a kid that'll translate to the NBA game. And, more times than not, you're wrong. And so, there's kind of a guessing game. There's, certain things you look for, but it's actually been kind of fun. And I think it'll be an ongoing process for me to try to figure out the spacing, because the game, I say it every day, the college game is very different than the NBA game. And, there'll be players, it's just like Europe. There'll be a player that's really good in college. His game doesn't translate to the NBA, maybe because of size or shooting or something like that. Same thing going to Europe or not. But, in Edgecombe, I haven't seen a lot of him, but I think he's probably a good example. And then there's also the big point of, getting drafted in the right team, good timing, and things of that nature. Look at Sam Merrill. You know what?
Yeah.
Be going to Cleveland, perfect team for him at the right time, and it's worked out well for both sides.
Coach, I was going through your roster, and I was actually going through all of our in-state rosters, and I found it really interesting where you go everything from here at the University of Utah. I go everything from Finland to Senegal to Taipei, Washington, D.C. You go to England, Germany, Mali, and you don't see Utah on the roster. And I know you love this state. I know you love the talent in this state. ideally, how much Utah do you want to recruit? How much Utah are you maybe interested in getting on your roster? And kind of help me through. Like the international recruiting is complete insanity compared to when I was in college or you were in college.
Yeah, and I took the job, and I knew, I finished up in Dallas, and the portal, so the portal is kind of madness, and I do want to recruit the state, and I think any in-state school, if you look back at their success, they've done it with in-state kids. This is going in any sport, going back decades. I think it was one for me. I think learning the space, learning the players. I mean, there's new high schools that I feels like I learn of a new high school or a prep school every day. But we do have Keanu Dawes, who's a local kid, and we have Jackson Johnson and David Katoa coming back from missions. But yeah, I think definitely want to get the best players in the state. And I think just with the money, there's a lot of money for players to make and their agents and the in-between people. So I think that's had a lot to do with the explosion from Africa and Europe, because I think there's a huge explosion in Europe, kids that didn't necessarily want to come to college, but when they talk about the money that they could possibly make, it's hard to turn down.
There you go, Alex Jensen, head coach at University of Utah, the running Utes men's basketball team. And fantastic interview there. If you want to listen to its entirety, you can go to kslsports.com, and you can find that full conversation in the archives, the podcast archives. Just great stuff. And right there, just talking about the state of Utah, the way I look at it, great. If you get an AJ DeMonza who happens to be here at the Wasatch Academy doing his thing, and you can recruit an in-state kid that way, it's fantastic. You want to get the kids that can help you. And truth be told, I don't care where you go. I don't care who you recruit. Yeah, it'd be nice to see local kids that are great, that can help you win, stay in-state and help you win. But I know one thing for sure. Coaches stay around as long as they win. So recruit the guys that are going to help you win. Basketball is a different beast. Probably more football players in the state that can help you, but the per capita is one thing. When you're looking for basketball players, they're a little bit more non-existent. They're tough to come by. 6'10" dudes that can run a court, shoot a jumper, very tough to come by. So if you got to go buy them out of Africa, out of Europe, out of Australia, out of Asia, wherever you got to go get them.
Don't forget they had that pipeline from Australia for quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Going back to the days of Andrew Bogut. So go find the guys that can help you win. And my whole thought on Alex Jensen is give him everything you can possibly give him. Because if you can't get it done with a very famous alumni, a guy that loves your university, a guy that left the NBA and was a top assistant and was looked at as a potential NBA head coach for many years, a guy that is known for his developmental abilities, a guy that is as kind and generous as it comes, a guy that envelops community, a guy that just bleeds Utah red. If you can't do it with him, then who are you going to do it with? If you can't get this thing turned around with Alex, then you tell me, give me 5 names that are better than Alex Jensen to come in and get things turned around. And the truth is, I want to see that stadium, the Huntsman, as raucous and as crazy to play in as anywhere in the Big 12, because I love the state of Utah. I love sports in the state of Utah, and I want to see it back. And Lloyd just sent me a tweet thread that was pretty hard to read through from a Utah fan that feels like the fan experience is dwindling. Get the fan experience back. Get the support back. Make sure Alex Jensen has everything he needs and wants to succeed. All right, we'll take a quick break, come back to Sound Sleep Medical and more Hans and Scotty.